Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Full Color Waterfall Podcast. On today's episode 109. The reason you missed that duck in your decoys might not mean that you're a bad aim. Might just be that you chose the wrong choke tube. But first, my sponsor of the program, True Dave Gear. From their waders to their boots to their waterproof backpacks, they got you covered for anything that the outdoor waterfall marsh can throw at you. So give them a look, guys. Full color 15 at checkout. Save you some money, and you can use that toward, buying a choke tube like we're going to talk about today. All right, guys, so let's be honest with ourselves. Have you ever missed a duck at 20 yards and stood there just thinking, there is no way I should have missed that bird? Or maybe you hit the bird, but it sails off, and now you're watching a cripple swim toward the cattails, knowing that farewell, you're not going to get out there to be able to get that bird. A lot of the time, it's not bad shooting. You just chose the wrong choke. A lot of us are setting up our shotguns like we're shooting lead, but steel doesn't behave the same. And you have to understand that before you go out in the marsh and have a really bad day of shooting and blame it on everything but yourself. In fact, a modified choke, yes, I've heard this many times from different people. Some people say it's true, some people disagree with it, but in fact, your modified choke with steel might actually shoot more like a full choke. And I'll explain that, and we'll break it down on this one going forward. You see, we all know a guy. We all know a guy or multiple guys that, they chalk it up to they're just a bad shot. They don't quite comprehend lead on a bird. Or they just don't know how to pick up the bird and figure that aspect out as they're pass shooting or decoying birds. But have you ever asked the question to any of your buddies, or maybe this person is you and you're just missing birds left and right? Have you ever asked the question to yourself, am I using the right choke tube for the situation at hand? You see, if you're a person that goes out in the marsh and decoys your birds, yes, actually decoys your birds, feet down over your decoys, waiting for them to get from 20, 25, 30, 35 yards and not past 40. If that's you and you consistently miss birds, yes, your choke tube matters. You might be going the whole thing wrong because, you've been told your whole life, modified choke is what you use for duck hunting. I fell in the trap that in early years as well. But what people don't realize or people don't even think about is what that pattern does when you're crimping it down like that. Now, there's a whole different bunch of variables. Way too many variables to get into a very simplistic podcast. But one of the things that people don't realize is you have all these ammo out there. You have all these ammo from different companies from 1325 feet a second to 1700 feet a second. Your load and what you're getting for pellets and the speed matters, what's coming out of these chokes. If you're going in and you're using a modified choke, and that's your go-to choke. If you're going with faster steel loads, your pattern might be almost to the point of over full. You're throwing these faster steel pellets that don't deform like lead does. You're throwing them down this tube, and you're basically taking your duck gun and you've just now made it into a, turkey gun. Turkey target shooting duck gun. Which, if you take your pattern and you're making it so dense that, what is it doing to that pattern? It's getting it to the point where it's so tight that you're shooting a 6-inch, 8-inch, 12-inch circle at a duck. Basically eliminating your shot string. Or making it shorter and shorter and shorter every time you go up in higher velocity, higher velocity, higher velocity. Now, you pair that with high velocity and you go to double BB or triple BB, now you're making that pattern even tighter. So why are you missing? Well, you're missing because you're throwing a baseball at a duck. And if you're off a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, your pattern's gone. You're basically shooting 22 at that duck. Now you go down and you drop down to 1450 or 1550 feet a second and you scale down to smaller pellets of steel down into your 4s and your 3s, maybe even a 5, depending on which way you want to go. Now you're throwing that bigger pattern out there. You're slowing it down a little bit to allow that shot string to come out of the gun properly for you to hit more birds. Now you open up that pattern, take that modified choke, throw it off into the filing cabinet or wherever you want to put it, circular file, doesn't matter, and you switch to an improved cylinder. And you open up that pattern because, after all, you're decoying birds. You're getting them in close, and you're going to get them within 35 yards. There's no reason to use a modified choke. Now you get them even closer than that. Say you're shooting at birds at 20 yards. They're right in your decoys, decoying at 20 yards, 25 yards, and what have you. If you have a modified choke, your pattern is probably so dense at that distance that you'll never hit anything unless you're on them 100%. Now, obviously, getting into different types of situations changes that whole dynamic of that. If you're a person that's on public land and all you're going to get for opportunities to shoot birds is sky high or passing shots and stuff like that, yeah, modified choke makes more sense because, well, you're going to have to reach out there and poke them a little ways because, well, 35 to 45 yards is kind of a common denominator shot that you're going to have in those areas because nobody lets the ducks decoy, let's face it. So when you're getting into all this stuff and say you're a person that misses a lot, like a lot, play with your choke tubes to figure out what is the best range and best for, well, not only your gun, but also what shot size matters to you the most to be able to hit ducks and not cripple them and watch them sail off into the weeds. What I've found for my shooting style and how I like to shoot is typically I either use improved cylinder or mod factory chokes. This year I switched over to an extended choke tube just to see the difference on the pattern density and what it would create for me. And it basically got to the point where I had to almost relearn how to shoot. It made your pattern, and mind you, I don't shoot 2 double BB, triple BB, and all that. For a lot of ducks, for most of the year, I shoot 4s or 6s. I don't believe in going into big, huge, ginormous pellets to shoot a duck because if you're accurate and you have more pellets on bird, then you're going to knock those birds down and, hey, you'll still be able to eat them because they're not blown to pieces. But having to learn how to shoot at birds with a dense pattern that was a little bit tighter was a little bit difficult at first. I shoot a lot of clay pigeons. I shoot a lot of shotguns. So all it took was a couple birds for me to understand, like, oh, okay, yeah, that pattern's tight, like tight. So in different situations, I would have to bring, depending on how the birds were operating and working for the day, I'd bring 2 different choke tubes along. I'd bring an improved cylinder, or I'd bring a extended modified choke with me, just depending on if the birds wanted to cooperate or not. And one thing I did notice is the part that made me a better shooter last year and the year prior was going to dropping down to those 4s and 5s and 6s and shooting those kind of shots rather than going up to 3s and 2s and double BB and alike. I really started to understand that extended choke tube a little bit more going into early teal season because I shoot heavy teal by Heavy Shot, since 6 Shot I do believe, and switching to that and just being able to have more pellets on target, teal fly close together, and well, when you get accurate with your pass shooting as ducks are coming into the decoys, and my buddy Adam can attest to this, there's a couple times this year where I was dropping 2-3 birds with 1 shot coming into the decoys because my pattern was still wide enough with a bunch of pellets to be able to hit 1 or 2 birds and stone them, not just wing them, stone them to where they're on the water. I think the best flock I shot this year was 3 birds with 1 shot and then 2 birds with the next shot, so I almost had a full limit in 2 shots, which was pretty crazy. But knowing these choke tubes and going through all this makes you have the confidence in the marsh. And for a lot of you guys that might struggle with shooting, and getting out of your own head sometimes really matters. You start missing birds and you start understanding that, everything you're shooting at, you're missing. What do? You You get frustrated, you get pissed off, and you start swinging, you start over-aiming. Yes, I know over-aiming doesn't sound like something that would be a bad thing, but in shotgunning it is. You're taking away all your muscle memory, and you're trying to really focus on that front bead, and you're thinking way too much about the shot rather than letting that fluid motion get to that bird. So how do you put all this stuff of improved cylinder, modified, high velocity, tighter pattern, low velocity, opens up that pattern and makes it more practical for duck hunting for you and kind of playing with these choke tubes? Take your gun out and actually practice shooting clay pigeons with improved cylinder, modified, change up the size of the shot. Yes, you can shoot clay pigeons with steel shot. It's a little more expensive, but go out and figure out how dense that pattern is, how not dense that pattern is at those distances, and you'll be able to knock more birds down and build that confidence. One thing that a lot of duck hunters do not do, they do not pattern their gun on paper. I don't know why. It took me a long time to even think about doing it and even giving it a try, and then you do it, and you're like, holy crap, that pattern sucks. Or, holy cow, the wad blew right through the middle of the target because I'm basically shooting a turkey load at these frickin' ducks. And then when you understand that, then you understand how you're missing so many dang birds because you're throwing that baseball at them instead of throwing a basketball or something bigger as far as a pattern out there. And when you're swinging through, what your shot string looks like behind those birds. Understanding your gun fully makes it big difference on taking birds out of the sky. Now, you might be one of these guys that, has to go to the extended choke tube, extra full, and all this kind of stuff so you can reach out and poke stuff at 65 yards. Learn how to decoy your birds. Decoying your birds and getting your birds in close, that makes all the difference on having your shotgun and your shotgun pellet size. All those things work for you because you know how to decoy a bird. You know how to duck hunt. Anybody can sky blast at a duck ripping across the top of the treetops 70, 80 yards up there. At the end of the day, all you're going to do with your extra full pattern is maybe hit it with one pellet, wing it into the weeds, never to be found again, and, well, now you're just going to get frustrated, or you just think it's fun going out and killing stuff and not finding it, but that's a totally different podcast for a totally different day. Go through and research a lot of the different companies that are out there that make choke tubes. Mueller is one of the better ones up there. It's probably, or one of the best out there. You got Pattern Master, you got Cremator, you got all the Carlson choke tubes, just a whole bunch of companies out there. Figure out and do your research which one seems to be the one that works for your gun. One of those choke tubes might not be the best for a Winchester SX4, but it might be the best one to use and utilize in a Browning A5. Or a Mossberg or Stoeger or whatever gun you have. Understanding those things matter. So this off season, like I talked about in the previous podcast, challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to do things a little bit differently than you did last year if you were on the struggle bus and just couldn't get off of it. And figure out the different ways that you can help understand your shotgun and understand your shooting style. And it'll help you tenfold in the marsh. Doing nothing and going out there and doing exactly the same thing and getting the same result, yes, we know what that is. That's insanity. Nobody should be doing the same thing, going out, putting in all this time and effort that we do to pursue waterfowl, just to come home with nothing because you can't hit the broadside of a barn standing inside. So, my takeaways and for this podcast are very simple. Learn how to call. If you already know how to call, decoy your birds. If you decoy your birds, figure out which choke size you can go to, scale it down, scale it up, that work best for you at those distances, and bump that shot size down a little bit and see how much it puts more ducks in your boat because you have a better pattern with more pellets on bird that are going to put more birds in your boat, in your fry pan, in whatever recipe that you want to cook because, yes, we're using our birds, we're not throwing them away. And I think all around it'll just make you a better hunter and understanding your shotgun fully. And when you understand that shotgun, it's going to be a direct reflection and muscle memory to your body. And it's going to make you an all-around better shooter. So, pretty short one today, guys. You can't really talk too much about shot size and choke tubes too much without getting into this company over that company and all that kind of stuff. That's not what I'm wanting to get into. If you want to pick the choke tube that's right for you, doesn't have to be the most expensive thing out there like everybody tells you it has to be. If it works for you, and I mean, you're a person that goes out there and shoots a Remington 870 pump with improved cylinder out of the box, and that works for you, so be it. But scale those shots down a little bit and see if it makes a difference for you out in the marsh, in the woods, in the field, and what have you. And until the next one, guys, I appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys.